if there were, you know, a scheduled contact with a representative with each district that he represents, then
That'd be a big deal.
then at least you're getting some voice that, you know, he would hopefully represent. I mean, again, people with a difference of opinion, maybe he wouldn't, but again, not for me to say. But then maybe that's another element we can send to IWMA. We feel that representation, if we don't have a change of how you operate, just a change in the business process of communicating with each district, say even before meeting.
Sure.
Or on a monthly basis. How often are the meetings? Quarterly?
Yeah,
They're monthly.
They're monthly, yeah, they're monthly, but so in the last year though, they've been canceled, you know, back and forth, but all Zoom and usually monthly.
Okay.
And they have an executive meeting, I think, the week before the monthly meeting.
Okay. Well, that's my opinion. Anyone else care to share?
No, I feel the same.
Yeah, I agree.
Mr. Rowney?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear what you said.
So to backtrack, you know, I think that, I don't want to speak for everybody, but there seems to be some consensus that we don't feel that changing or removing the current representative for IWMA is justified. We wouldn't support that, but we would like to engage with perhaps some more contact so we have more of a represented voice with that group. And further, we don't want to support or not support the polystyrene ban.
Okay, yeah, that, I agree. Yeah.
Okay? So what do you need from us, Director Calvis?
That's a great question. What would be the best direction to move forward? I mean, we can reach out to Mr. Enns with, and you said Mr. Duffield?
Scott Duffield is on the new tag force for the SB 1383, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so because there's going to be so much action happening in the next few months, that would be a good place because your voice would be heard there because he's the one representing the CSDs on the tag force, not on the board. And then Mr. Enns would be the one that would be representing you on the board. So if you reach out to him and give him your concerns and let him know what you're thinking, you're going to get some more stuff coming up from the IWMA in the next few months that have a lot to do with regulations and ordinances and things that are coming up for organics. And I mean, in their defense, it's all state stuff that's coming down that they're trying to get through and figure out a way to implement that in our county. For the town of San Miguel, we're already, you know, 90% compliant of what they want, with plenty of room to go and be 100% compliant by the time it's due. So, again, I would like to just keep the control in San Miguel.
I would.
Keep that in the back of your mind when you are discussing these items and things with, and ordinances that the county could pass.
I would that they provide local control and not letting our wonderful pencil pushers in San Luis, and not concerning the person that sits next to me.
Okay. I've been working in San Miguel for 8 years.
But the bureaucrats in San Luis, I don't think that they always have the best interest of our community at heart, and so, you know, anything we can do to ensure our voices are heard is always something I would support. So I guess do we take public comment, Mr. Board President?
We haven't yet.
Okay. But my turn, I guess, would be to summarize the points that we want to make into a letter. You know, even amend the one going to IWMA and send it to IWMA, CC, Mr. Enns, and then also to Mr. Duffield. Is he the manager of Heritage Ranch? CSD?
He is.
Okay.
Yes.
With giving no opinion on the styrofoam and no change to the rep,
Yes.
just wanting to reach out, letters going to state reaching out to be part, okay. Consensus of that, does it sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Reach out, have them reach out to us on certain things when there's major things that are happening, or also there are increased representation of
Director
dialogue.
Calvin's gonna be working on that and then bring it to us
I guess I can do.
to review with Mr. Roberson.
You know I'm not the best with words.
We can start it and then we can.
Okay.
Well, you consider yourself voluntold and report back, how about that?
Okay.
Started it.
He started.
Thanks.
Do we have any public comment on this item? No. Okay, any further board comment, or do we have enough direction for staff? Okay,
Okay.
We'll be talking.
All right.
Okay.
all right, let's move on to item number 5.
And thank you for attending, Mr. Mayor. Sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Review and approve resolution 2021-07, establishing the dates for application and sales of safe and sane fireworks for the 2021 calendar year.
So Scott Young has been working on this. This is the same as every year. We bring it for you, so there's a resolution establishing the dates. And this one, basically nothing's changed. July 1st is July 4th, as it was like last year. Fourth of July falls on Sunday this year, so we'll probably have an eventful weekend.
Yay.
Yes, you will.
Do we have any board comment or questions on this item? No.
Yeah, comment, so do you allow them in town
The
or certain areas
safe
of
and
town?
sane fireworks are allowed within the district boundaries, so if you're within the district boundaries, you're allowed to purchase and use safe and sane fireworks. Illegal fireworks are illegal anywhere
Right, so the safe and sane, anywhere in
in the district boundaries.
Yeah,
And that's
Only on July 4th.
only on July 4th, yes.
yes, okay.
So the resolution lays out the application period. The application period has been adjusted. This should have came last month, but last month meetings got shuffled, so we modified the dates to reflect March 29th through April 30th as an application period. And the sales would be from the 1st through the 4th, starting on the 1st at noon and ending the 4th at 11:59 p.m. Will be the use as well.
The permit fee went up this year, is that correct, Mr. Young?
The permit fee went up based on what our staffing costs are. So every year, the minimum wage goes up, and that drives the staffing cost up. So it's like, I think it's $1,620 is a per booth, non-refundable application
Yeah,
fee.
1560.
1560?
Yeah.
There you go. 1650, 1560, one of those.
Okay. So all told, it'd be an additional $500, so 2,060, which is $500 was refundable for cleanup.
The vendor, being TNT Fireworks, they post the cleanup bond,
Okay.
and once we determined if there were any cost involved in the cleanup, then we refund the bond amount to them, either in part or in whole.
Okay. Any other board comment?
Procedure question, paperwork will be ready for the applicants, I assume, within the week after this meeting, or?
The paperwork should be ready by March 29th.
Okay.
Is there any public comment on this item? Okay.
I say, just keep everything going like it has been. Get them fireworks here.
Well, then I motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, Director Gregory,
Yes,
Director Calvin,
Yes.
Director Palafox,
Yes.
Director Roney,
Yes,
Purvitt,
yes,
President Sangster,
Yes.
approves 5-0, no absence.
So we have item number 6,
Which we
We've kind of covered that.
Yeah, we touched on that, but just as a recap, it is $15.60 per booth as a administration fee. There is no cost to the district for the staffing. The fees from the booth pay for the staffing 100%, and any cleanup efforts will be covered by TNT Fireworks. And the insurance requirements, TNT Fireworks provides the insurance. We have $1 million bodily injury, $3 million at each occurrence, and then no $1 million for every occurrence thereafter.
Guess the meeting's over.
That was my occurrence.
I was trying to roll these into one, so it wouldn't be kind of a redundant rolling thing, but it just didn't lay out proper, so staff advised that we break it into two. So sorry you have one right after another, but it seems like the natural flow of things.
That's okay. Do we have any board comments on this item?
No, he kind of covered it.
Yeah. Any public comment? No. Back to us. I'll motion to approve.
A second?
Director Calvins,
Yes.
Director Roney,
yes,
Director Palafox,
Yes.
Director Gregory,
Yes.
President Sangster.
Yes.
Passes 5-0 with no absence.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 7. Continued discussion on the fire department temporary housing unit.
This will be, again, Scott.
So this is a continuation of our saga to provide a temporary housing unit with a sheriff's beat station to the property to the south of the fire department. The process has involved contact with Scott Keller and procuring a lease agreement with Mr. Keller. So there was a agreement that was forwarded by Mr. Keller to the district. We did review modification, tentative presentation. The dates have been changed to accommodate the schedule change for the meetings being altered. I think that was the only modification other than the additional lot, the easement lot to the east was added to the agreement, and the tax item was identified as a tax increase due to improvements by the lessor. So that was clarified. This was reviewed by the general manager and reviewed by legal. Legal had no concerns. This is a fairly cookie cutter standard. By the time we finally got it ironed out, all the red lines were removed from the agreement. I went through and made sure that the entities were properly identified. Somehow this seemed to be a CAL FIRE lease that Mr. Keller had worked on another property, so that was adjusted and modified. And Mr. Keller's willing to move forward with the lease as it is written.
I do have a couple of issues. First, under the term, the dates are incorrect.
Where you at? What page?
First page of the lease, so page 123 of the packet, or page number 2 of the lease. You have term, and it states it's a 3-year, which shall commence May 1st, 2021, ending at midnight April 30th, 2023. That would only be 2 years.
2021, 2022, 2023.
You're beginning in 2021, so you go 21 to 22, 22 to 23 would be 2 years. And the dates below it, under the rent, the first year goes May 1st, 2021 through April 30th, 2021. Well, that can't happen, so it would be, all the dates are, the years are all one off.
Are they talking about a subsequent year though, following that date? So after the 2023, that following year?
In contract terms, you're simply stating it's a 3 years to commence May 1st, 2021, and ending April 30th, 2023. That is simply 2 years. it's not covering a 3-year period.
I see what you're saying.
And then in the first year, you're saying we're gonna get $4,800 of rent from May 1st, 2021 to April 30th, 2021?
We're gonna go back in time when we can extend it.
So,
You know what I'm
as
saying?
I mentioned,
Just to prove it as a meeting, to reflect the correct dates.
that was reviewed by legal, and everyone was confident that the dates would be adjusted, and that wasn't a primary issue. But now that it's clarified, I could easily modify those.
Okay.
And these dates were completely different. They've been changed. This would be the fourth time.
Okay.
Just
So
each all we need is an amendment to reflect that it's a 3-year contract with and data amendment are approved as part of the approval.
Okay. The other issue I have is the payment is considered delinquent after 5 days. I know that I mentioned this in the first go-around with us. It doesn't state payment terms. I would think as a public entity, we would get a customary net 30 terms. And this is saying it's due on a specific date in 5 days. I mean, the only reason I'm being picky on this is that we, as a public entity, there's a process by which the financial officer generates a check. It takes 2 people to sign it. Sometimes that takes more than 5 days. So my issue with that is that for whatever reason, if we don't meet the 5-day timeline, we're subject to a delinquent fee.
I had a response to that. And the response to that, and I ran it past Aaron, is that personally, I have been a landlord in San Luis Obispo County for about 12 years. Prior to that, I managed large properties, 85 unit, 125 unit apartment complexes. Never have I asked a tenant to give me an invoice or have the landlord give the tenant an invoice. Based on the terms of the agreement, we know the date that we have to make the payment. So it is our obligation to make that payment at a timely manner. I don't give my tenants an invoice every month and say, pay me. The only time I give them an invoice is when they're 5 days late and I want to start a 3-day process. So it seems unnecessary. If that's, I'll leave it up to you to decide, but typically the lease terms are laid out by the lessor, not the lessee. And if we have the dates established, then we should be able to meet that obligation. We have a similar agreement with South Coast for our engine purchase, and it's our obligation to make that payment on that day, on that year, via resolution. So we should be able to meet the same obligation on our own.
Okay, well, I'll leave that to the rest of the board. To me, 5 days seems unreasonable, given that we're a public entity. It isn't like this would be fine for an individual. You were simply, your rent is due on April 1st, you write a check.
Well, as a public entity, we should know our rent is due on April 1st, so we should have it ready the month before.
My point is that there's more than one signature required. There's a process to generate the check.
And it's our onus to provide a timely manner to meet his obligation.
I understand exactly what you're saying. Again, I'll leave it to the other board members to comment on that. Does anyone else have any comment on that now?
Is it Mr. Kelly that wants the 5 days?
It's a standard lease agreement, so within 5 days, if we are late, then we have a 5% increase. And that's pretty reasonable. What I charge is slightly higher, I believe, because the law allows for it. And honestly, I've never charged my tenants a late payment. I'm happy that they pay their rent on time on a personal note, but it's on page 2. So those were the terms that he had laid out.
I mean, I see the president's point. We're not an individual that just signs a check, there's a process and everything. I guess it's up to staff. Staff can handle the 5 days, then I'm okay with that, but if not, maybe extend it to 10.
Well, I would say that it would be our obligation to be prepared to make the payment if it's due in April. If it's due on May 1st, then at the beginning of April, we should have the payment in the process, in the queue, ready to go, and it should be there early, not late. As a responsible lessor, we should do our part and not expect Mr. Keller to provide us an invoice for payment for something that we've agreed to on an annual basis.
I would not say that either. No, that's not necessary.
I would say just in general, this being May 1st, April 30th, it's not a July 1st due date, so our budget is already well established at that point. So that check could be made any day after July 1st for that particular year. So theoretically, they could make a check July 1st and it would be there months in advance. Obviously, the initial payment would be, there's only a couple months between now and then, so it would have to be made soon, but there's really no reason that it couldn't be made 30 days in advance and have plenty of time to be signed and sent. But there is always that possibility that things get delayed and what have you. But
Question.
One's up to staff.
When you refer to due date, is that stamped postmarked or is that in hand?
That should be in hand.
Yeah.
'Cause I know I've seen somewhere it was, if you certify it by a certain day, that you're sent certified mail or stamped postmarked, then it was counted. I wasn't sure how.
That's not included in this.
Right, okay.
So there's a whole provision about when things are considered effective, but there's a whole paragraph that goes into if it's by this way, it's this, that goes.
It also has to do with whether or not that date falls on a weekend, because if it's on a weekend, the first is on a Saturday, then you don't have to
Right.
actually make payment until the 3rd, then 5 days beyond the 3rd, it would be late. So there's a ton of renters laws that apply that we're really not touching base on.
I mean, you may want to, it may be appropriate for the board to clarify 5 business days if that's it. I mean, I don't know if this was, this can be legally set at whatever's negotiated, right? But I would probably clarify that it's, I didn't include business, at a minimum, I probably include business days. It's just as a way of kind of addressing what I think are some of the underlying concerns being mentioned by the board. But it's whatever's negotiated.
Mr. Roney, any comments on this item?
You have to unmute yourself.
No, I do not.
Okay. All right, anybody else?
I agree with Director Gregory that it pretty much depends on staff if the 5 days is enough to get 2 signatures. I feel 5 is okay. Sometimes there is days where probably one of us can't sign, and if it passes those 5 days, that's, I guess.
I think it's kind of misleading. The intent is to have this ready to be presented at least 30 days ahead of time. We would start the process if the due date would be May, we would start in April. And we'd say we have to pay our rent for the year, and we'd prepare the documents, and then sometime in that 4-week duration, the check would be prepared, it would be waiting for signature, and it'd be our responsibility to put it in the mail and get it to Mr. Keller in a timely manner. I don't think that we would be waiting for an invoice and we have to pay it in 5 days, or we would say, ready, go, 5 days, this has to be prepared and done. It's our responsibility to make sure this happens.
It is, I'm just trying to safeguard the district's finances and an extra 5%. When I think if it's 5 calendar days is unreasonable in my opinion. And I, again, work in similar contractual deals all the time. As I think Mr. White pointed out, maybe we can clarify it as simple as 5 business days. Any comment on that? Anybody?
I'm fine with the addition of 5 business days if that's.
Yeah, that's fine.
Mr. Roney, would you be opposed to 5 business days?
No comment.
Okay. Okay, so let's make that 5 business days. Under the heading of liability insurance, that's really, the second paragraph deals with improvements, and it states specifically that the lessor would want written consent before any improvements can take place. Do you have written consent that we have the ability to install this temporary housing unit on this property?
The written consent is via email, and this is the whole intent of leasing the property. We're not trying to pull one over on him. He's very aware of the purpose for leasing the property.
I know, I agree, it's just a contractual obligation, so I want to make sure we have something that will cover the district with regards to that requirement.
Which page are you on?
I'm sorry, I'm on page 4 of the lease, page 125 of the packet. Under liability insurance, section 12, in the second paragraph, it states, with regards to all lessee improvements before commencing any construction or works of improvement on the premises, either prior to or after commencement of the term of this lease, lessee shall obtain lessor's written consent in addition to having secured all insurance required by this lease, and shall maintain and enforce till completion, acceptance, blah, blah, blah. So it states that the lessor wants written consent to begin any construction or improvements.
Well, you're saying you have that by.
Yeah, there's plenty of email confirmation of what we're doing with the property. He has received plans and other documents. So as things progress, I would assume that we would be in contact and say, this is our intent, and he would sign off on our intent to put whatever property we're doing, or whatever we intend to put on his property. Whatever we do is temporary in nature, and he's well aware of the fact that it's temporary in nature, and the property will be turned back to an in-kind condition upon removal of our housing unit. So there is no real improvement to his property.
Okay. Would emails suffice, Mr. White, in meeting that requirement?
It would, I mean, if you want to be more specific, we could act, including electronic communication. So that's what we would,
As long as you think from a legal perspective that it would be,
particularly after COVID,
okay.
electronic communication.
Okay, well then that's fine, then we have that. My last comment on this is in regards to termination. So we're on page 127 of the packet, page number 6 of the lease, under section 19, specifically section A. It talks about termination and surrendering the property immediately. There is no language in this that protects the district with regards to the improvements. The improvements are a temporary housing unit. And what I am concerned with is if for any reason this lease is terminated, that housing unit then becomes the property of the lessor, not the lessee. And it's complicated, I'm sure, from a legal perspective, because it would be registered to the lessee. So, to me, that sounds like a legal battle that would be costly.
Can I ask a question on that? The building that's being proposed is a manufactured home, and it's not being anchored, is it being anchored to the foundation?
It's being placed on what's called a permanent foundation system. It's basically a jack that's attached to the frame of the trailer. It's called a trailer for lack of better terminology, and then a 2x2 concrete pad that sits on the ground. So that constitutes a permanent foundation from a building perspective and from an insurance perspective. But as far as a mobility perspective, it is anything but permanent.
Because I was confused on whether or not some manufactured homes are considered personal property, and I forgot what was
It would be registered, it's a vehicle.
Because like I know mobile
So
home parks,
They would have the registration for that vehicle.
And you gotta pay DMV every year.
So there is that.
I think the issue is that it's set on a foundation, and it's set with no tow bar in front, with no wheels on it, so it is not like we could just hook it up and drive it out that day, so.
The wheels are typically stored under the vehicle, and the tow hitch is removed and stored under the vehicle as well for future relocation.
Yeah, I'm with you, but my concern is that there's no language protecting the district from that becoming the property of the lessor should this be terminated.
Once again, Erin has reviewed this entire document in its entirety, and she sees, I'm not going to speak for her, she's not here, but my communique with her was that she sees nothing put in the district at any undue risk.
Defer to council president.
Yeah, so I want to make sure that I understand your concern, President Sangster. So your concern is beyond the leased premises, it's to the underlying ground, basically, right?
So my concern is that the district will spend whatever we spend, $100,000+ on a temporary housing unit.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be placed on the property which we are leasing.
Mm-hmm.
If for whatever reason, this termination states that if this is terminated, we surrender the property immediately. So if that housing unit is still in place on a foundation, on the property, does that then become property of the lessor? That's my concern. There's no language in here to stipulate that it would not.
So the lessor would inherit whatever legal rights underlie it. So they would inherit the lease. They wouldn't be able to terminate and take over a fee interest with that. So in other words, they can't convert our lease on ground into a fee interest. They could only inherit or take over our lease position.
Well, if the improvements have been paid for, and
Correct.
owned by the district,
Correct.
they're present on the property in question,
Correct.
we surrender, it's essentially a tenant improvement. Does the tenant improvement then become property of the lessor if it's terminated?
In the event of default,
Yes.
the tenant improvements could become the property of, but it's only because we're in breach, and that would be act as the collateral
Sure.
for the agreement as part of the breach. So, and it's just like a security deposit that you would put down, and so you'd have property that would act as part of the security deposit. I guess I want to make sure I'm exactly following, because I get the sense that you intend something different than what
No, what I'm simply saying is that we're going to make an investment in the property by putting this temporary housing unit there.
Correct.
So if for whatever reason we default,
Yeah.
but for whatever reason, it doesn't state specifically why, it just says upon termination, the property is surrendered immediately. So if that occurs,
Mhm.
does that tenant improvement then become the property of the lessor?
I would think you'd have to lean towards regular renters law, and they'd have to evict us from the property. If we went and defaulted and said we're not gonna pay our rent because we didn't have the funding, then there would be a 3-month process that would be implicated and started by the sheriff's department, and he would have to physically evict us from that property. And during that 3-month period of time, we would have the ability to remove our property. And even if we were locked out, say, and a fence put around the property, we still have a legal right to come and retrieve our property, and our property would be the vehicle that is registered to us on the property. I can't see them seizing that, and renters law would protect us from that.
So if you look at the definition of what premises, because this is really where it goes back to, property number control, which are the 4 like with no improvements. So to address your concern, we wouldn't actually put it there because it uses a capitalized P. Premises is a defined term. So terminate leases right to possession of the quote-unquote premises by any lawful means and have surrender immediate possession of the quote-unquote premises to the lessor. So that would be the property unimproved.
Okay?
It's because of the definitional terms and the define. Is that?
I don't believe those are in here.
It is, so premises is defined, so right of possession in the cap premises, immediate possession of the cap premises. Premises is defined, if you look earlier on number 1 on page 120, it's 123, I don't know, 123 of the packet. So if you go in there, number 1, hereinafter referred to as premises, lessee leases the property commonly known as successor parcel numbers, blah, blah, blah. Hereinafter referred to as the premises, large quote, which are the 4 vacant lots and easements with no improvements. And so
Okay.
that's what they would be able to get.